Good morning, class, and welcome back to our online classes initiated by Rishiram Shikshan Sansthan, Joshara, Uttar Kashi. As discussed earlier in the previous live class, I have just given you a brief description about the chapter The Happy Prince. So, today we are going to begin the chapter The Happy Prince. So, The Happy Prince. The Happy Prince was a beautiful statue. He was covered with gold. He had sapphires for eyes and a ruby in his soul. Why did he want to part with all the gold that he had and his precious stone? So, the Happy Prince is the prince name, and he has been made to a statue. Means after the death of the prince had made the people had made the prince statue, and the statue sapphire means a transparent blue precious stone. Sapphire means a transparent blue, and the precious stone was embedded in his eyes. So the eyes of the prince were of the precious stone, blue precious stone, which was embedded in his eyes, and a ruby was stuck in his sword. Now let's begin the chapter. So high above the city, on a tall column, stood the statue of the Happy Prince. He was gilded all over with thin leaves of fine gold. So there's a city there, and high above the city, on a tall column. So in the city, mid of the city, there's a tall column built, and on that tall column, the statue of the prince was fixed on it. So, and he was gilded all over with thin leaves of fine gold. So the construction of the statue, or the statue, was made up of all precious stones and gold. So gilded here means thinly covered. So the statue was thinly covered with gold. And for eyes, he had two bright sapphires, and the eyes were of sapphires. Sapphire means transparent blue precious stone. So the eyes were very precious stones, and the precious stone that was transparent and blue precious stone. And a large red ruby glowed on his sword hilt, and on the sword hilt means here the handle. So the sword handle, there was a large ruby was stuck in that, or we can say ruby was put in that. So on the handle of the sword. One night there flew over the city a little swallow. So one night what happened? A swallow flew over that city. Now his friend, whose friend? The friends of the swallow. So his friends had gone away to Egypt 6 weeks before, but he had stayed behind. Now 6 weeks before, the sparrows were migrating from one place to the another. So what happened 6 weeks ago? The friends of the swallow moved to Egypt, and he was left behind. Now he was left behind, so he also started moving and reached the city of the Happy Prince. And then he decided to go to Egypt, and after that he decided to go to Egypt. Now he flew all day long, and at night time he arrived at the city. So all day long he flew from the place where he was, and he thought of moving to Egypt. Now when he traveled whole day, at the night time he reached the city of the prince, the Happy Prince. And where shall I put up? Means now traveling all day long. Now the swallow was tired of flying, so he decided that he will stop in the city of the Happy Prince. But now, when he thought of stopping in the city of the happy prince, he decided or he thought where to rest or which place to rest so that he can spend the night and the next day he can fly away to Egypt. So he said, I hope the town has made preparations. And he says that I hope means there are some place for him. The towns have prepared some place for him so that the sparrow can rest there. Where then he saw the statue on the tall column. So while flying, then while he was flying, he was thinking to where to put up or where to rest. And while thinking in the air, while flying, then his eyes went on the statue of the Happy Prince, which was placed over a tall column. And I will put up there. And he decided that he will rest on that tall statue, or we can say the tall column where the statue was placed. Now he decided to rest on that tall column, and it is a fine position with plenty of fresh air. And he said that the tall column, because the column was very tall, and the above, we can say the above atmosphere there, he felt that there is fresh air moving around. So he decided to rest on the column. Now, so he alighted just between the feet of the happy prince. So when he decided to rest on the column, so he alighted. Alighted means he flew down to the column or to the statue. And when he flew down to the statue, he flew down to the statue. He moved to the in between the feet of the statue, and he said, and he thought to himself that in that place there would be much fresh air, and I have a golden bedroom. Then he thought to himself that because the whole statue was thinly covered, or we can say the whole statue was gilded with gold, and the sapphires, and his eyes were of sapphire. Sapphire means the transparent blue precious stones, and his sword was gilded with a ruby, a large ruby on it. So he thought to himself that his bedroom now, because the swallow is going to rest on that tall column between the feet of the statue. He thought to himself that now his bedroom, he imagined that place to a bedroom, that his bedroom was of gold. Why was the bedroom of the gold? Because the statue was made up of, or the statue was gilded with gold. Therefore, he thought that his bedroom was a gold bedroom. Now he said softly to himself as he looked around. So he was talking to himself while he was looking around from the tall column to the city. And he prepared to go to sleep. And then after resting on the column, he prepared to go to sleep. But just as he was putting his head under his wings. Now here, what do you mean by but just as he was putting his head under his wings? So the putting of his head under his wings means that he was preparing to sleep. That means that he was preparing to sleep. So he was putting his head under his wings. That means he was preparing to sleep. Now, a large drop of water fell on him. So while he was preparing to sleep, what happened? A large drop of water fell on him. What a curious thing, he thought to himself. The swallow thought to himself that what a curious thing, how this water drop came on him, because the environment, or we can say the environment, or it was not the rainy day, because the day was not of at all cloud. So how it is possible? So therefore he thought that how was it possible that or the water droplet was very making him very curious. Now there is not a single cloud in the sky. because there's not a single cloud in the sky, and the sky was clear, with the stars are quite clear and bright, and yet it is raining. So he thought to himself, though the sky was very clear, there were not a single cloud in the sky. But after that also a drop fell on him. So that made him very curious. Though the stars are shining and the stars are clear and bright, and yet it is raining. How it is possible that it is raining? Then after that another drop fell. And first drop fell, and he thought to himself that what a curious thing it is how the drop fell, because the sky was clear. And then after thinking, again a drop of water fell on him. So a drop of after the falling, what is the use of a statue if it cannot keep the rain off? Now he thought to himself that he was beneath the statue, or between the feet of the statue. He thought, what is the use of this statue if this statue cannot protect me or not protect the swallow from the drop of waters? And I must look for a good chimney pot. And he decided that here on that place, on that tall column, what happened? He was being drenched by water. So he thought to himself, in this way he cannot sleep he cannot sleep in the night. So therefore he decided to find a chimney pot. And he determined to fly away. And he determined here means he decided. The sparrow decided to fly to a chimney pot where he can be protected from these water drops, or where he can be safe, and he can spend his night or he can spend his sleep very pleasantly. So he decided to move, or we can say, so the sparrow was determined to fly away to the chimney pot. Now, but before he had opened his wings, a third drop fell. Now, as the moment he decided to fly to a chimney pot, what happened? Again a third drop fell on him. Before he spread his wings to fly and to find out a chimney pot, again a third drop of water fell on him. And and he looked up and saw. And when the third drop of water fell, he again looked up. And what did he see? What did he see? Now, what did he see when he looked up? The eyes of the happy prince were filled with tears. So, at the moment when he was determined to fly away to a chimney pot, when the third drop fell on him, he looked above and saw. And what did he see? He saw the eyes, the sapphires of the happy prince was filled with tears, and the tears were running down his golden cheeks. The sapphire means his eyes was gilded with sapphire. Sapphire means the transparent blue precious stone, and that stones were filled with tears, and the tears were moving down his golden cheek, because the statue of the prince was gilded, or we can say was thinly covered with gold. So therefore his face was also made up of gold, and the tears were running down his cheeks. And after that, his face was so beautiful in the moonlight that the little swallow was filled with a pity. So the sky was clear, the stars were bright, and in the moonlight, the reflections of the reflection of the moon, or we can say the light of the moon, shine on the face of the happy prince, and that moment made the happy prince very we can say that made the face of the prince very beautiful, and the swallow was filled with pity. The swallow was filled with pity means here sympathy. So he had sympathy inside himself. He had a feeling that what was the reason behind the prince crying, or what was the reason behind the tears of the king? So he was very pity. He was filled with pity at that moment, and he said, "Who are you?" He said, and he said to the prince that, "Who are you?" "I am the happy prince." And the prince replied to the sparrow that, "I am the happy prince." "Now, why are you weeping then?" He asked then. He asked the statue that, "Why are you weeping?" So, dear students, as you remember that before we started this chapter, in the last video, I had given you a brief description about the whole story, that the prince was happy because he was kept in the palace without any problems, or without any difficulties, without any pain. He has been grown up in such a situation, and he has never gone through sorrow, he has never gone through pain. And that's the reason when he saw that, when he saw when he was put on the tall column statue, he could see all the surrounding of the city. He could see all the sorrow, he could see all the pain the people are going through, or the people are suffering from. So therefore he said, uh, the swallow asked the prince that, "Why are you weeping? And you have quite drenched me." So he asked the prince that, "Why are you weeping? Why are you crying?" And because of your crying, because of your weeping, what has happened? The swallow had been drenched. Drenched means made completely wet. So the swallow was completely made wet with his tears. "When I was alive and had a human heart." So the prince again started, or the prince began to tell the swallow his story, that what happened to him. So when I was alive and had a human heart. So the prince said, when he was alive, when he was the prince of this city, he had a human heart. He was a human heart means he was very kind person, and he has not seen suffering, he has not seen pain. So therefore the surrounding, the, or we can say the atmosphere given to him was of a very kind, very pleasurous, and he pleasure, and he enjoyed his life. And I did not know what tears were. So when he was alive, he did not even know what tears were, because he was not provided, or the atmosphere or the situation was not given to him. Then he struggled pain, or he had sorrow, because the life of a prince is very comfortable, or we can say it as you can imagine, in the olden days, the life of the king. So life of the king is very what? They do not have to go for work, they do not have to earn money, they just have their whole kingdom, and from that kingdom they earn. So therefore, if you do not do any work, if you do not gain pain, the prince lived that life. But in today's life, if you see that people are struggling, or people are struggling for food, for one day food also people are struggling. So this, he was provided a atmosphere, he was provided a circumstances that was filled with happiness. That's why the prince name was the happy prince, because he never experienced sorrow, he never experienced pain. So and so therefore he did not even know what tears were, because why did he not know about tears? Because he was not given that circumstances, or he was not given that situation, or the atmosphere was not of that, so that tears came out. So after that, for I lived in the palace where sorrow is not allowed to enter. So when he was living in the palace, what happened? The sorrow was not allowed to enter. He could not experience those sorrow or those pain. Now tears. When do tears come? Tears come when you go through a very difficult situation, or when you go through a very difficult, or we can say when you go through a very severe pain. Then only tears come. So therefore, these circumstances were not provided to the prince. Therefore, he never experienced, or he never knew what tears were. And my courtiers called me the happy prince. And the courtier means the prince companions, or we can say the prince companion means his friends. The prince friends called him happy prince because he never because the sorrow was not allowed to enter the palace. Therefore, he never knew about sorrow or pain. So his courtier called him the happy prince, and happy indeed I was. And his courtier called him, his companion called him happy prince, and he was happy at that time. So I lived and so I died. So at the time he lived, that time he never experienced sorrow nor pain, and after that he died. And you all know that, students, those whoever has born on this earth will definitely die one day. After that, and now that I am dead, they have set me up here so high that I can see the ugliness and all the misery of my city. And though my heart is made of lead, yet I cannot choose but to weep. So the prince says, when he was alive, he was kept in the place where sorrow was not allowed or not allowed to enter the palace. And after that, after his death, the people of that city has made a statue of the prince and placed him in the tall column. And from there he could see all the ugliness and the miseries, the unhappiness, he could see all the ugliness and unhappiness of the city. And though his heart was made up of lead, though the statue was made up of gold and lead, and though the statue, his heart was made up of lead, he he cannot have any choice but except to weep. So I cannot choose but weep means that he has no choice except to cry. This sentence means that he have no choice except to cry, because what he can do, the statue was fixed to the tall column, he cannot move here and there. So what was the option to him? So the only option left to him was that he had only to weep, or he had only the option to cry. What is he not solid gold? So the swallow thought that the statue was not of a solid gold, was the statue not made up of completely gold, said the swallow to himself. He was too polite to make any personal remark. So he was polite. Polite means to give respect or full of respect. So he thought to himself that can he make any personal remarks to the prince. Far away, continued the statue in a low musical voice. So, because the statue was placed on the tall column of the tall column, so therefore he could see all the, or we can say he could see the whole city. For example, when you go to Dehradun from the top of Mussoorie, when you can see whole of the Dehradun region, whole of the Dehradun place. But the statue had certain powers that he could see deeply, or we can say that he could see clearly things there. But when we are on the top of Mussoorie, we are not able to see. We are just able to see the whole city, that Dehradun, but we are not able to see particularly the place where we want to focus. But the king could see. So, but the prince could see, and what he saw, and he started his misery, or we can say he started his pain, or he started sharing his pain to the swallow. And he said, far away, with a continuing with a very low musical voice, far away in a little street there is a poor house. And what he saw from the tall column, that he saw that far away there was a street, and in that street there was a poor house. So poor house, one of the window is open, and of that house, the poor house, one of the window was open there. And thought it, I can see a woman seated at a table, and from that window, from the house of a poor house, and the house, one window was open, and from that window, what the statue saw, or what the happy prince saw, that a old woman was seated on a table. Her face is thin and worn, and she has coarse red hands, all pricked by the needles, for she is a seamstress. Now, what he saw from the tall column, he saw that a poor house was there, and that poor house, a window was open, and through that window, he could see that old woman was seated on a table, and he saw that. So see how deeply the king noticed, or the deeply the king realized, that he saw a woman seated on the table, and her face, the face of the woman was was thin and worn. Worn means it was old and wrinkled. The face of the old woman was thin, and the face was wrinkled, and she has harsh, she has coarse red hand, and her hands. So see how deeply the king noticed that his even he could see from there the hands of the old lady, and the hands of the old lady were coarse, or we can say the hands of the old lady were very rough, and all prickled. Prickled means all damaged here. The prickled here means damage, all damaged by the needle. Now, why the hands of the old lady is damaged by the needle? Because for she is a seamstress. Now, what do we mean by seamstress? So, seamstress, we can say that seamstress are those is, or we can say, is used for female tailors. So, all female tailors, men tailors, tailors, for female tailors, we call them seamstress. So, I'll note it down that seamstress. So a seamstress here we mean female tailor. So the old lady whom the statue or the happy prince saw, we can say he described the whole of the lady, that who the lady was, how was his face, how was his hand. So he described all those, and he could notice those pain, or he could notice that struggle or that sorrow of the old woman. So, seamstress, dear student, I would like to say one more thing before continuing. Please, when we start a new chapter, I would like all the students to write on their fair notebook the word meanings, the difficult word meanings already in the notebook before starting any chapter. So that when you take the book and read with me, and when I explain those, so that you can also learn those difficult words, and by learning these difficult words, what will happen is that your vocabulary will increase, and when your vocabulary increases, what happens is the confidence in you to express your thoughts, to express yourself, will improve. So I would like all the students, when we meet in the next when we meet whenever the school reopens, I would like to see that all the children who who will study in this school speaks very fluent English. So let's hope so that all children speak very well. So continuing, now the female face was thin and was worn. Worn means it was very old and wrinkled, and the hands of the females were prickled, or we can say pricked. The hands of the female were very rough. The hands were rough because it was pricked, or we can say it was damaged by the needles. And why was the hands damaged by the needle? Because the lady was a seamstress. The lady was a seamstress means the lady was a female tailor. She is embroidering flowers on a satin gown for the loveliest of the queen's maids of honor. Now she was now because she was a female tailor. Now she was embroidering a flower on the gown, or you can say of the gown of whom? Of the queen. Queen's maid to honor to wear at the next court ball. So whenever the next court ball, when the next gathering had to be done, or when the gathering was made of by the queen, so she was preparing. She was preparing a satin gown for the queen's maid of the queen's maids of honor. Now, in a bed in the corner of the room, her little boy is lying ill. So, and then after that, he noticed that in the corner, the lady was sitting on the table and was doing her embroidery. And he noticed that in the next room, a little boy was lying on the bed. And he was lying on the bed because he was ill. He has a fever and is asking his mother to give him oranges. Now, the little boy was suffering from illness and he requested, or he asked his mother to give him oranges. His mother to give him oranges. His mother has nothing to give him but river water. Now the old lady was very poor and she do not have enough money to buy oranges and give to his ill son. So therefore, except he had what he had, he can only give him water, or he can only provide him water, that though from where? From the river water. So he is crying. So therefore, why the little boy was crying? Because his mother cannot provide him oranges because he is ill and she can only provide him the river water. Therefore, he was crying in the next bedroom and lying on the bed. Swallow, swallow, little swallow, will you not bring her the ruby out of my sword hilt? Now, then he asked, now because the statue cannot move here and there, he cannot go to places, he is fixed to the column, and or you can say he is attached to the tall column permanently. So he cannot move here and there. He can only see, he can only visualize things, or he can visualize the sorrow, he can visualize the pain, and he cannot move. So he asked the swallow that, will you not bring her the ruby? Will you not take the ruby out of his hilt, from the hilt? Whose hilt? The prince's sword hilt. Sword hilt means the sword, the handle of the sword. The handle of the sword, there was a big ruby there. So he asked the swallow that, will you not take this ruby and give to the old lady? Because now why he asked the swallow to move? Because swallow can fly from place to place. Therefore he asked him that, can you take this ruby and give to that old woman, so that the old woman can sell this ruby and have some money to buy food or to buy fruits for the ill son lying in the next bed. And he says to the swallow that my feet are fastened to this pedestal and I cannot move. And he says to the swallow that his feet, the feet of the statue is permanently, or we can say it is completely attached to the column. It is completely fixed to the column so that it cannot move. Now, because he cannot move here and there, he requested the swallow to take this ruby and give to the old woman, so that she can sell that ruby and have some money and bring foods or fruits to the ill son or to herself. So he cannot move here and there. And now we will continue the next paragraph in the next live video. and please make sure that you maintain your notebook properly, fair notebook, well covered with neat handwriting, and you can send me your work in a PDF format. And within this, let's say within 15 days, I would like your notebooks. I would like to see that who is continuing or who is continuously doing his work with sincerely. So please maintain your notebook, and I'll give you 15 days. In these 15 days, please send me your work in the PDF format to my WhatsApp number. Thank you and have a nice day, dear students.